You're tuning in to the Raised by Rentals program. This podcast will contain strong language and spoilers for decades-old media properties.
Join us.
Welcome, everybody. This is the podcast where we examine pop culture franchises of the VHS era and improv new stories like dirty, dirty scabs crossing the SAG-AFTRA picket lines to imagine how we might improve our favorite movies, TV, and games. I'm Josh.
I'm Mike.
And we were raised by rentals. Mike, it's not quite autumn yet, but for me, the road to spooky season has begun because my kids have finally gone back to school.
My kid is not yet, but it's coming. It's like 2 weeks away.
Oh, yeah, and see, that's unusual for me. One of the many things on the list of things that I have not gotten used to now that I've been living in Texas, coming from mostly, growing up in Western New York. And even though I've been in Texas for like a decade and a half, there's still some things I've never gotten used to. And that is one of them, which is that the new school year starts in the middle of August instead of in September.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I always sort of associate months with certain things that happen in that month. January is New Year's and February is maybe like Valentine's Day. You kind of have, and maybe it goes back to like little kid calendars I had in my bedroom, as
Right.
as a little guy with like, it's like, what is it? April showers and May flowers,
Yep.
And so I always think of September as the back to school month. And doing it in August is kind of weird because to me, August is like the height of summer. It's the hottest, nastiest days when you definitely need to be at the beach or at the pool. But my kids have been in school for a week.
Right. It's like, that's weird.
It's kind of weird too. Like, just like I've never gotten used to hanging up my Christmas decorations in shorts and a t-shirt.
That would mess with me so bad.
It's the weirdest thing. Where I live in the Austin area, winter, like true winter, lasts for like a week and it shuts the entire fucking state down. And then it's like 80 degrees again.
Oh, man, I couldn't do it. I am not a hot weather guy.
Yeah, it's getting kind of brutal. I think we're getting to the point where we're making some serious thoughts about what to do as the kids get older. Like, do we really want to stay here? It's too hot. It's
Right.
I don't know. Like, it's something that Christina and I have been thinking about. But regardless, I'm happy that my kids are back in school. I work from home, so when they're off for the summer vacation, they're here all the time, and I'm here all the time, and the two dogs are here all the time, and it gets to be a little much. So as much as I love them, they got to go back to school.
Yep.
And I'm happy to have them out of my hair a little bit. But yeah, so Caleb goes back in September, right? Your son.
Yep.
So like to the traditional back to school. And what grade is he in now? I can't remember. 6th grade, right?
He'll be going into 6th grade.
Yeah, so he's about the same age as my son, going into 6th grade. I went to go tour the middle school with Griffin, and man, that's kind of a surreal experience because he's like my young guy, and my older one, Tegan, is already in high school, and I think I've had a couple years to kind of get used to that. But taking the younger guy to the middle school, and now he's going to be going to different classrooms for his classes, and because it's Texas, some of the campus is outside, and they do a lot of things outside, so it's just kind of a strange experience. But anyway, because it's back to school season, we've had on our schedule for a while, and several people have suggested in the meantime that we pick the most obvious of properties to feature for a back to school special, which is Back to School, starring Rodney Dangerfield from 1986.
Woo!
So
I'm definitely a fan of this film, but I have some thoughts after rewatching it critically. So we'll get there.
Yeah, let's definitely talk about it for a little while. So yeah, I remember loving this movie all the way back to being a kid. I said it came out in 1986, so I'm 6 years old. I probably saw it on Showtime or HBO or from the rental store. So I definitely would have been 7, probably 8 years old when I saw the movie, and I've always thought it was great. To me, it's another one of those classic, like, feel good 80s comedies. It's not a John Hughes movie, but it might as well be. And Rodney Dangerfield was having like a comeback in the 80s. I think it was like his third career comeback.
Right. Because he was like in his 60s in this movie.
Yeah, and I didn't really know much about his past, other than I knew he'd been a stand-up comedian for a while, even before he was popular in the 80s. You know, things you kind of pick up. But I didn't realize that he started as a professional way back when he was a teenager in the 30s,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy to think about. And he had a career resurgence in the 50s and then the 60s, and then again in the 80s. And so mostly known as a stand-up with his "I get no respect" routine is probably, his his
Right.
most well-known bit. But I thought he was a good actor, and he was in a lot of fun movies in the 80s. I think, or hell, when did Caddyshack come out?
80s and early 90s, because there was some early 90s flicks he was in as well that were really good. Like I always remember his terrifying role in Natural Born Killers, where he was the creepy father of I can't think of Juliette Lewis's character. Mallory. It was Mickey Mallory. Yeah, it was Mallory's stepfather. So it was just creepy as hell. And to see him, going from this lovable, charismatic, goofball in every one of his movies to suddenly he's like this skeevy, sleazy, drunken, abusive father. And it's like, holy shit, he played that really well.
He did.
So,
yeah. And I hate to disparage the guy, but skeevy, sleazy, drunken. I mean, that's kind of him in Back to School too.
I mean, yeah, it's funny because it shows that, and I have a comment about this when we get into the movie, but it shows that if you have a little bit of money and are charismatic, people let you get away with a lot of shit.
Yeah, I have a soft spot for ladybugs in my heart.
Yes, fuck yes. I used to love that movie.
Yeah. Oh man, what's his name? Jonathan Brandis, right? He was in
Yeah.
that. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the movie before we get into an improv for today, because I feel like this is a movie that to guys like us, it seems like, well, of course you've seen this. If you're of a certain age, an older millennial or a younger Gen X type person, you grew up in the VHS era, of course you've seen Back to School. It's, sort of a standard.
Mm-hmm.
But if you haven't, let's talk about it a little bit. So yeah, Rodney Dangerfield is essentially the main character of the movie, although Keith Gordon, who plays his son, is also kind of a central focus. So Rodney Dangerfield plays Thornton Mellon. He's a rich guy. He owns a whole string of retail stores, the Tall and Fat clothing stores.
Yep.
And he was played by a young Jason Hervey in a cameo at the beginning. Jason from the Wonder Years and there's the fucking Monster Squad and Back to the Future. I love that dude.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so Thornton Mellon, he's this rich guy. His son, Jason, is away at college. He thinks that Jason is on the collegiate high diving team, and that he's doing really well in school. He's in a fraternity, but Jason is sort of avoiding having any visits from his dad. So Thornton, who catches his second wife, played by Adrienne Barbeau, another great member of the cast, sort of one of these great character actors of the time. I mean, you could probably tell us all about, her cinematic history, but fuck, The Fog, Creep Show, Swamp Thing, Escape from New York. I mean, she's probably in a shitload of your Boogeyman's Closet movie reviews.
Oh, yeah, dude, I have mentioned specifically the line from Sequest 2021, the I want to be an Adrienne Barbeau bot. Because she pops up in so many of our flicks. And I used to have a huge crush on her when I was a little kid.
I mean, why wouldn't you, right? I mean,
I saw Swamp Thing very young, and I'm like, I like her. But
well, not to derail the plot synopsis, but in one of the early scenes in the movie, Rodney Dangerfield or Thornton catches her making out with fucking Robert Picardo at a party at his house. And I'm like, this is one of the great character actors that we always talk about on this show from the fucking Burbs. He was brilliant as a villain in Inner Space. I fucking love that dude. And he has this great cameo role in Gremlins 2. If you've listened to the show long enough, you know that I stand Gremlins 2 fucking hard.
Yep.
So that's kind of the trend we're going to get into. Like right at this very beginning, we see that there's so many of these great character actors. And when I was making notes for the show today, I just kept going on and on and on and on just about the cast alone. Because I'm, again, in this early scene, fucking Timothy Stack plays this, one-off cameo character talking about a painting on the wall, some trendy hipster type from the 80s. And I had to look up Timothy Stack because I'm like, I know I've seen him in 1,000 TV shows. Like, what is this guy really known for? Like, what's the thing that I can mention? Oh, yeah, it's Timothy Stack from, and I couldn't really figure it out because he's just been in a bunch of like sort of random stuff. But I realized after looking it up that I'm like, oh, he's the fucking dude from the Tales from the Crypt episode where he plays a conjoined twin.
Yep.
Which is a great episode.
That's the first place I always think of him from. Is from that tale. I love that episode. But I love that because wasn't he saying like we were just looking at your wife's Clint, and he's like, oh, you too, huh?
Yeah, it was the painter Gustav Klimt, the painter of the painting that he had hanging on his wall.
Just the fix of his tie. Oh, you too, huh? Oh my god.
So Thornton breaks up with his wife. He takes his buddy Lou, who's fucking Burt Young from the Rocky movies.
Oh, I love him.
and they take off to visit his son Jason at what's it called, Grand Lakes University. Yep. And of course it's a fictional college that I had to look this up because for some reason it's not in the IMDb trivia. The University of Wisconsin at Madison fills in for fictional Grand Lakes, and man, they mention it in the movie, but Jesus, what a beautiful campus, right?
Yeah, it's really cool looking.
It's exactly like Rodney Dangerfield says in a scene where I close my eyes and you picture a college and like this is what it looks like. But anyway, not to belabor the point too much. So they get to the school. They meet up with Keith Gordon, who plays Thornton's son, Jason. And I love Keith Gordon. And I had to look up like what he's been doing since the 80s, because for me, he's always the dude from Christine.
Yep, same. That's exactly what I always think of with him.
And I also love him in Jaws 2. I'm a Jaws 2 apologist. That's probably another Boogie Man's Closet movie I'm going to have to do one of these days.
Yep.
But I looked him up and it turns out he's been directing TV for the last like 2 decades and tons of awesome shows like on a regular basis. Like he's a steady Hollywood TV guy doing like Fargo, Legion, Nurse Jackie, Dexter, and fucking even Better Call Saul, which is one of my favorite shows. So
wow.
mad respect for him to like, veering into a new career. But yeah, go look him up on IMDb. He's got a huge list of TV directing credits.
Very cool.
Anyway, let's just go through the cast a little bit more because I feel like there's a lot of like, at least for me, there's interesting stuff here with all these cool character actors. And I hope that people who listen to this show care about these sorts of like little details and these guys from this era. But there's Robert Downey Jr. I don't have to introduce who that is, but of course he is Kirk motherfucking Lazarus himself. And I always think of this as one of the William Zabka trilogy movies, right? Are you with me on this one?
Oh, absolutely.
William Zabka, of course, famously plays bully Johnny Lawrence in Karate Kid, bully Greg Tolan in Just One of the Guys, one of my favorite guilty pleasure movies, and bully Chaz in Back to School.
Yep. Although we could talk about it, but I feel he's less of a bully in this one and just more of kind of a dick. But he's not even that big of a dick. Like,
yeah,
he's kind of, I don't know why everybody hates him so much in this, like, other than, he's rude to Jason. Like, he doesn't like Jason. But it's like, all right. I mean, how many people liked you in school? It's like there was always that guy that didn't like you. Like, who the fuck cares?
Yeah, I feel the same way. He doesn't really do anything to Jason and Derek, who's the Robert Downey Jr. character, other than just be kind of an arrogant egotist. But he doesn't push them around or sabotage them or anything. He doesn't even throw the fucking punch when he gets in a fight with Jason at one point in the movie. Like, Jason cold cocks him, and that's it,
Yeah.
So
he doesn't even fight it back.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny how he gets wrapped up as this bully character, and it's like, not really. He was just this guy that Jason didn't like, and I think that's really more of what it was. It was the guy Jason didn't like, as opposed to the other way around. But anyway, I love William Zabka. I also wrote
Same.
down that he has a big long makeout scene as Jack from European Vacation.
Yep.
It's like, oh man. Anyway, yeah. So I'm not gonna go through everybody, but I gotta mention fucking Ned Beatty's in this movie.
Yep.
You gotta love Ned Beatty, right? Deliverance, Superman. I wrote down Rolling Vengeance. One of the many movies about like big rig trucks in the 80s, except this one was a horror movie.
One of my favorites, Emmett Walsh.
Yes.
Dude is in so many horror movies over the years. And one of the first Tales from the Crypt episodes, the one, I forget what it's called, but basically it's about the guy who didn't want to retire. And he finally retires, and like he can't stand that his wife has all of these stray animals and stuff that she's feeding. So he starts to learn taxidermy.
Yep.
He starts killing all of her pets and taxiderming them until she finally has enough and kills him and turns him into a taxidermy project. Great episode.
I looked that one up because it's actually one of my favorite all-time episodes, and it's the role that I always think of when I think of Emmett Walsh. I mean, yeah, he's in The Jerk and Blade Runner and all kinds of
Critters.
shit. But that's right. I forgot he was in Critters.
He's the cop in Critters.
Oh, I forgot. But I actually always think of him from that Tales from the Crypt episode because he plays the perfect retired curmudgeon, you know?
Yes.
And that episode's called Collection Completed. I did have to look up the title, but man, I fucking love that one. It's one of my favorites. And while we're on the topic, I noticed we had a Murder, She Wrote connection in this cast, but there's also a Tales from the Crypt connection with several people being in episodes, right? So we already mentioned that Timothy Stack was in Tales from the Crypt, but so was obviously Emmett Walsh and Burt Young and Robert Picardo. And according to IMDb, apparently Sam Kinison, but I can't remember what episode he was in.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God, he was in the oh shit, it's on the tip of my tongue. It's basically there's this Weasley little dude. It's got Peggy from Married with Children, Katie Seagal.
Oh, okay.
He's this concert promoter, and he's stealing all this money for like a fundraiser concert that they're doing, and his conscience is played by Sam Kinison, who's constantly screaming at him like, put the money back, and like he takes these Q-tips and like jams them in his ears, like eventually deafening himself, but he can always hear the voice still yelling in his head, and he ends up, in the loony bin at the end of the episode.
Oh, fuck yeah, dude. Fucking memory unlocked. As soon as you mentioned the Q-tips, I'm like, yes, it's the Q-tip episode.
And I'm trying to remember who played the Weasley guy, but I know it can't be Robert Picardo.
I just looked it up. No, it's Lee Ehrenberg, who I think of as one of the comedic duo pirates from Pirates of the Caribbean. He's like the short, bald guy with the Van Dyke mustache or the goatee. And he's in RoboCop 3, apparently. He's in a bunch of stuff. But yeah, in Pirates of the Caribbean, in the trilogy, there's the duo of the guy that plays Dwight on the British Office.
There he is. I see him.
You know what I'm talking about? Mackenzie Crook. Yeah.
Yes. He's also he's one of Kramer's friends on Seinfeld who doesn't like Jerry. And,
that's right.
I forgot about that. Yes. Okay. I knew he was a little Weasley dude. I couldn't remember who it was though.
Yeah. That's the cool thing about Back to School is there's so many of these guys, not only in the movie, but sort of like related, right? We mentioned Sam Kinison, who has this great cameo in 2 scenes as Professor Turgison, who is completely fucking unhinged history teacher.
I fucking love him. I miss Sam Kinison so damn much.
I know, me too. Oh man, I watched the Wild Thing music video today where he did that fucking cover of the Wild Thing and like changed all the lyrics.
Yep.
It's so good. Oh man, you got to go watch the music video. It's got all these fucking like 80s rock stars like Tommy Lee and Billy Idol.
He was such a fun comedian.
Yeah, he was for sure. He certainly like made his mark, but yeah, so like I said, there was the Murder, She Wrote connection. We don't got to go through all of that. We already mentioned Adrienne Barbeau, Ned Beatty, Paxton Whitehead, who I haven't really mentioned. He plays Philip, and then Sally Kellerman, famously from MASH, but she's also the English teacher who Thornton kind of has a crush on. So yeah, it's just this really, really great 80s cast of like 1 or 2 stars and then just a whole bunch of like really, really solid character actors who I think make the whole movie work really, really well. Because
I got to comment on one in particular. Eddie McClurg, if I'm saying that right.
Yes.
She is the perpetual 80s secretary. She is, and like she's a secretary in everything. And she's Thornton's secretary in this.
Yeah, from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and famously gets swore at many, many times in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yes. That's the scene I was thinking of.
Yeah, I fucking love her. I love her so much, yeah. There's all kinds of weird dudes in this movie, like Severin Darden, who was that crazy professor from Real Genius, and it's like there's just so many weird guys. You go down through the cast, and it's like, oh yeah, it's that guy from that thing, and that's everybody in this movie.
And Kurt Vonnegut.
Yes, I had that on my list too. Even fucking Kurt Vonnegut shows up, which somehow, even as a kid, I recognized that as Kurt Vonnegut in the movie. And I don't know, I must have seen him on some talk show or something, because I remember as a kid just thinking like, holy fuck, they got the real guy, you know? And ironically, who I didn't recognize or realize was in the movie until literally today was, oh, that's like the real Danny Elfman, like the actual Oingo Boingo is in this movie. Like, oh, that's really cool.
Making all of his weird spoopy faces.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, it's a great cast. And the reason I wanted to talk about the cast so much is just I love to just love on these VHS era stars, but also because when you think about the plot of the movie, it's kind of stupid. So you need a good cast.
There is, oh my God, that's one of my biggest gripes is there's no real plot. I
started explaining it and then just kind of went off on this tangent about like these character actors. But yeah, so basically Thornton decides to go to the school, visit his son. He finds out Jason was lying to him about the diving team and the grades and the fraternity and all that. He gives him this motivational speech that his dad gave to him when he was a kid. And Jason's like, yeah, whatever, Dad. You don't have to do it. And he's like, well, fine, I'll fucking do it too. And then he decides to go back to school, except he's used to just being this rich guy handing out money. So he just buys everything and is just trying to totally get by as like this rich guy who can, you know, I'll buy my grades. I'll buy my way into my class. I'll buy the fucking building, and I'll buy my way out of getting sued for sexual harassment when I walk in on people in the shower. Like, Jesus.
Right. And he went back and took a second look.
Oh, God, I know. That's why I mentioned him being kind of like skeevy and sleazy, even in this movie. But I definitely think it's one of those holdovers from the 80s. I mean, we've talked about Revenge of the Nerds and Animal House and these movies where there was this, for some reason, there was this weird trend of like, let's go break in and spy on naked sorority girls.
Yeah, it was almost like seen as like a rite of passage, but it's like, no, it's fucked up. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, super fucked up. Ironically, I also watched Point Break today for no reason other than it's one of the greatest movies of all time.
I mean, other than it's Point Break. I mean, what more do you need?
Yeah, Utah, give me two, right? I mean, that's
exactly.
But there's a scene in that movie where Keanu Reeves and Gary Busey, they break into this house as FBI agents. They raid this house, I should say. And there's just a gratuitous naked lady in the shower. But instead of just being this like, you know, screaming victim, she jumps out of the shower and kicks Keanu Reeves' ass.
Yep.
She beats the shit out of him. It was fucking great. Oh, man. Anyway. So yeah, so that's kind of the whole spiel of this movie is that, you know, Thornton Mellon tries to buy his way through college so he can prove to his son you can do anything. It doesn't prove shit to Jason other than rich people can do anything they want. So, like, what's the point of even trying? He completely gives up on his dream. And then, you know, Thornton basically has to go through this character arc where he realizes that, hey, I really should try for once in my life and prove that I can do something on my own without the money, which I guess he kind of does. Except the only problem with him is that he's this complete Mary Sue character, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything he tries to do, he's good at, even to the point where he's this champion high diver, despite being like an out of shape, overweight, 60-plus-year-old.
Exactly. Yeah, no, he is completely a Mary Sue character, and it kind of drove me nuts watching this critically.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty ridiculous. And so I just think there could be something better that we could do with this movie, but I don't want to try to reinvent Back to School, because I do think that the way that all of these amazing character actors chew the scenery, they really, really do some great work with this script. And I think that just watching this as a collection of scenes really works well. It's a really enjoyable movie. Like, I have a good time every time I watch it.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think I ever watched it critically, like looking for the cracks in it until today. And you kind of realize, yeah, geez, this is kind of problematic, but it's a great movie.
And that's the thing. Like, I do genuinely enjoy this movie. Like, I did laugh. It's been years since I watched it. I laughed at a lot of the jokes. I love Rodney Dangerfield's delivery. I've always enjoyed his style of comedy. There's a way he delivers his jokes that always makes me chuckle. Like, one of my favorite things. Well, first of all, let's just start right in the beginning. One of my favorite things about this movie is the really bad Photoshop in the opening montage. Where you just see, like, they just took Rodney Dangerfield's head and, like, stuck it on random black and white photo bodies. And it's like, it's so bad. But it's like, there's, like, the skin tones don't even match. Like,
yeah, he always looks way too happy and his head's too big. Yeah.
So that was cracking me up. But one of the other things is when he's watching his own commercial, and there's a line where he's talking about the tall and fat store, and he goes, when you look at a menu, do you say, okay? I fucking lost it. I was like, that is like one of the best fat jokes I've ever heard in my life. And I've heard a lot. I was like, holy hell, I love that joke.
So a lot of really good lines in this movie. I'll give it that.
I had to pause the movie because I was legitimately in tears. Like, I was like, that was fucked up. But then another line that I've been quoting for years, and I always forget it comes from this movie, is where the fucking professor, I'm forgetting the characters' names, but the dickhead professor asks the love interest professor, he goes, what did he want? She goes, oh, Philip, what do all men want? And he goes, he wants you to dress as Wonder Woman, tie him up with a golden lariat, and force him to tell the truth. I fucking lost it. I was like, this is the movie. Like, I always forget.
I found it.
But,
like, man.
Overall, like, what is the point of this movie? Like, don't get me wrong, I enjoy it, but there's no message. Basically, Thornton goes to school to be closer with his kid, and then he decides while he's there, hey, I'm going to do what my dad always wanted me to do. I'm going to go to college. Okay, cool. I'm following this line of thinking. He uses his wealth to buy everything he needs while barely being around his kid, the main reason he's there. He's having parties and missing study dates that he's supposed to have with his kid because he's out drinking with his buddy. Like, he's not doing what he told you he's going to do at the start of the movie. So, all right, whatever. He never gets in trouble. Like, every time he fucks up, he's like, hey, here, have some money. And everyone's just like, okay, cool. Forgive him for whatever he just did. So basically it's teaching you can buy your way out of anything. He tries to get with one of the teachers, and she's kind of into it. And then he goes and fucks around with a bunch of other girls at a party. And then he's all like, oh no, I fucked up. And then he wins her back because of course he does. He gets the girl without any effort. And for that matter, fucking Jason gets the girl without any effort. He has this crush that he's like creepily watching from across the room for how long. And she's dating Chaz or with Chaz or whatever. They're going out on dates at least. And then suddenly he's like, I've always loved you. I'm sorry. I have to tell you about it. And she's like, oh, I love you too. Why? Why does he love her? Like, they haven't spoken. What is the point of this? Thornton does the whole thing where he's bragging to the swim teacher about being able, he was the guy that did the triple Lindy, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, oh, can you still do it? He's like, oh, no, that almost killed me, even back then. Now, for whatever reason, Chaz gets mad at the final, session. It's like, oh, I hurt myself. Oh, what's the point? What's like, he's sabotaging his own team. He's mad at Jason. Okay. But so what? He fucks over the team to just be like, I gotcha. But then the teacher's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to sub in this old guy with literally no discussion to Thornton at all. It's just like, yeah, get your suit on. We need you. He comes in. It's just like, yeah, you're going to do that dive that you said almost killed you. Yeah, you're going to do it. And he just does it. And of course, he nails it perfectly. And it's like what is happening here?
Yeah, it's weird too. I felt like the movie was going somewhere up until the end because I think what they were trying to show was Thornton Mellon, who became this really successful, rich businessman. He pulled himself up by his bootstraps. He never got a college education, but he was still successful. And yet he decides to go back to college kind of on a whim. And then over time kind of starts to take it seriously and enjoy it a little bit. And so I think that the arc they should have gone for, or they were kind of hinting at, was even if you are successful on the sweat of your own back, you should always still get an education, right? It's like,
right.
I don't remember what the exact quote was that Thornton's character heard from his dad that he then repeated to Jason, but it's something like, a man without an education is nothing. Right. And I think that was kind of what they were trying to get at, was it's not that your education will make you successful, it's that your education is part of how you become an adult, a man, and you're not really developed as a person unless you're properly educated. Because look at this rich guy, and he's rich and successful, but he's also crass and rude and gross and drunk and hangs out with thugs, and he buys off, the mafia teamsters or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, I think they were trying to show that like, it's not about the success, it's about becoming a better human. Like, you're evolving as a person by becoming educated. And that's a good message, except that when they finally get to the point where Thornton is taking school seriously, there's no reason for him to. There are no repercussions other than his own bruised ego. Because Jason already doesn't care about school at the beginning of the movie. He still doesn't care about school at the end of the movie. There's no threat to Thornton at all in his personal life. He's not going to lose his business. He's not going to lose anything. The worst thing that he might lose is this new girlfriend-ish relationship that he has with this teacher, with Sally Kellerman's character. That's the only thing at stake for him is, hey, I slept with this woman once and I think I might want to do it again. So I'm going to take my education seriously finally, and I'm going to win. But again, suddenly he just knows everything after like one cram session. Suddenly he's this perfect high diver. The real lesson in the movie is that he just made friends with everybody and glad-handed everybody with, $100 bills. Mm-hmm. And that's how he became successful in life. So the lesson here is, who cares about your education? Just buy everybody off and be charming and make friends.
In other words, if you're wealthy and charismatic, you can get away with anything.
Yes, exactly.
Which, I mean, in a way is kind of the perfect message for an 80s yuppie movie where it's like, wealth and charisma gets you everything. But the other thing that drives me nuts in this is that the speech he gives at the end. Because the speech, he's just basically going on about, stay in college, get a good education. He's like, because it sucks out there. Life sucks. Move in with your parents. And then he gives a thumbs up to the camera, and it's like, end the movie. Like, so the message is, have money and make other people do things for you because life sucks.
Yeah, I know. And that would have been the perfect opportunity for him to give that same speech again, but this time mean it. The speech he copied from his dad, where this time, instead of it just being this empty platitude that he repeats to Jason to try to convince Jason to stay at the cool party school, instead, if he had meant it by the end, he had this character arc where he realizes, hey, yes, I'm successful, and yes, I'm charming, and yes, I have all this money, but it doesn't mean anything because I wasn't educated. And now that I am educated, I understand the world. I understand my business and my relationships and my family, and everything's better. So stay in school, kids. That should have been the movie,
Right.
Oh, man.
Oh, again, it's a fun movie. I'm not saying it's not fun, but my God, talk about a movie with absolutely no reason to exist. Like, there's no story. There's none.
No, it's just a vehicle for Rodney Dangerfield to like literally just, walk all over the place, handing out money and cracking jokes and being like the life of the party.
So yeah, I mean it's a fun flick. It's funny because of Rodney Dangerfield and all of the amazing actors that you mentioned earlier. But again, like for any story, in my opinion, for any story to be something that I can recommend, it needs to have a plot and a message of some kind. There has to be an arc. There was no character arc, no story arc, no nothing here.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think that is definitely the problem. And Jason, Keith Gordon's character, I think is the worst example, or I guess the best example, depending on how you look at it, of why this movie doesn't work, because he should have been the POV character for the audience. He's the character that gets the audience into the story. You can't really relate to rich, successful Thornton Mellon, but you can relate to his son who's kind of like living in the shadow of his parents. I think a lot of people can use that as an entry point, and he should have been the audience stand-in. And I think he is, again, except he doesn't go anywhere. He's just another member of the shooting gallery in like Rodney Dangerfield's movie,
Right.
He's just there to serve a purpose. He's like a MacGuffin that just gets Thornton Mellon to the college. And then once he's there, it's like, I guess he could have a girlfriend or something. I don't know. They don't really know what to do with him after that,
Oh, it's just so kind of like half-cocked.
Yeah, it definitely is. So I think we could probably do something interesting, though, with everything that we're talking about right now. We're spending this time kind of bitching about a fun, entertaining movie that kind of is a failure as a story. Mm-hmm. But I think that we could try to apply the lessons that, we're using to criticize the movie, to say there's no story arc, there's no plot, there's no growth, there's no entry point character that works for the audience. Let's take some of those criticisms and see what we can do to improve our own idea. But I don't want to redo Back to School. I don't want to have to say, okay, well, how would we have fixed the movie? Because I think if we did, we would lose a lot of these cool characters that I like in the movie, because they would be pointless, right?
Absolutely.
Like Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Derek, Jason's, weird Ducky-like best friend, is useless to the plot. He's just there to be a goofball, and he might have been in a couple of scenes, but he doesn't need to be in it as much as he is. So, but we like seeing Robert Downey Jr. be a weirdo.
I have to admit, the scene where he throws himself on his back and starts going, "Oh, do me!" and freaking Rodney Dangerfield goes, "What are you doing? Get up! You look like the poster boy for birth control." Like, that fucking cracked me up. Every time I've seen it, it's cracked me up. It's just like, what the fuck is he doing?
There was a bunch of movies in the 80s that had characters like this. Like I mentioned Ducky, right? But there's a couple of movies like this where it was kind of a trope to have like the weird art student best friend who was into like weird political causes, or like the cause of the week,
Yep.
And they would have some crazy like Flock of Seagulls haircut, like they're wearing Adam Ant makeup. They always wear these weird tweed raincoats,
Yep. Although I gotta admit that the end scene where he's heckling divers cracked me up. Yes. He's like, "You never see anyone heckle divers?" Then he busts out the air horn like, "Mark,"
and like the little mirror. Yeah. Yes. And I don't want to belabor the point either, because I want to get into the improv. But you mentioned too how William Zabka's character, how Chaz, he kind of throws the match, which for me was the one scene in the entire movie that if I could just completely change it, I would change this. It's the one thing I really don't like, because earlier in the movie, Chaz berates Jason for purposely throwing a match, and then he does the same thing, which would be an interesting character flip, like motivation flip for him, except there was no reason for him to do it. We see him, he basically just gets embarrassed because he got a bad score, and then the very next time he goes up, he like fakes an injury so he doesn't have to dive again. But I literally stopped the movie and backed it up twice, because I was like, wait, what did I miss? I thought Derek was fucking with him, and that's why he got a bad score. Because throughout the previous scenes where we saw them diving, he was always good. So there was no reason for him to suddenly fuck up and get a bad score. And I couldn't understand why they did that. I mean, I know everybody has a bad day, but from a storytelling perspective, it serves no purpose in the movie, and it was confusing.
Mm-hmm. I feel like all it was just like, "Oh, he got my girl. I'm mad." Like, I think that's all it was.
Yeah, it was dumb. They could have written that one a lot better. But anyway, I think Chaz kind of gets the short end of the stick in the movie, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I don't think he was that much of a jerk. He was just like a college frat guy with like a hot girlfriend who was kind of big man on campus, cock of the walk, and not everyone liked him. But like, so what? He wasn't a bad guy. He didn't do anything evil, and he doesn't even really get an arc in the movie. He just kind of disappears after he's embarrassed,
Right. I mean, realistically, he's just the guy Jason didn't like. That's all it is.
That's all. Yeah, it's there's so many characters in the movie. They're just kind of like the person that Jason, whatever, like Valerie, the woman he falls in love with, played by Terry Farrell. We didn't mention her earlier. Also a good character actor, been around for a long time. I didn't recognize her in anything except Hellraiser 3, and even that I had to look up.
That's honestly the main place I know her from. But like, yeah, no, she doesn't have any, like, she's literally just there to be one. Which is like, wow, that's a really shitty character role. Like, she has nothing to really say. It's just, Jason wants her. She's the object of his affection, and not even a lot of affection. It's more like object of him leering at her, and then being like, "I love you," and she's like, "Me too." Like, it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. The women in this movie are not portrayed well. You
No.
mentioned Valerie is like just a prize to be won. She's completely two-dimensional. And Adrienne Barbeau, who only is in the movie at the beginning as the cheating wife of Thornton, but that's it too. Like, she's portrayed as this complete slutty shrew in the few scenes that she's in. And then Sally Kellerman's character, who is supposed to be this very erudite and educated, like, woman of the world, English professor, but then she's portrayed as obviously in a relationship with Philip, yet she cheats on him at the drop of a hat because Thornton like wines and dines her. And
yeah.
It's like, why would she do that? I don't like, they didn't set that up as something that would be a part of her character. Like, yeah, maybe they have an open relationship or something, but no, they didn't set that up in the movie. So she just comes across as like this cheater, and then she chides Philip for being jealous. And it's like, well, he should be jealous. You like literally cheated on him with this guy he hates. Like, wouldn't you be jealous?
Exactly. Like I said, most of the characters in this, they have no real character arc. They're completely two-dimensional, and in some cases, they're not really that likable.
Yeah, exactly. So we've gone on and on about back to school, and I think there's a lot here that we can build off of. So let's improv something. And not only do I want to try to keep these kind of storytelling techniques in mind so we can do a better job of telling a story that goes somewhere, but also let's treat our female characters better. Like, I would go so far as to say that maybe we need a female main character, but I don't know. What are you thinking so far?
That's, it's funny you mentioned that, because that's exactly what I wrote down for a pitch, is a female main character, female lead. So now I'm just going to throw a bunch of info out there and see if we're on the same page or if you think this has some legs. So
sure.
What I'm thinking is that the main character should actually be Chaz, his little sister. We take this several years later. So like have this like 5 years in the future, whatever sequel. So Jason and Chaz have graduated from college. They're off in the real world. We'll get to Thornton in a minute, but like I was thinking that we could open the film with Chaz driving his younger sister to her freshman year at the college he graduated from. And kind of like, and we could see like, maybe he's driving a little kind of beat down car. He doesn't have the greatest life after college. Like he's a working man. Real world's hard, getting out there, helping his little sister. Maybe their parents are dead or something. Like we could give a backstory that like, maybe he has to look out for that reason. Their parents passed away or something like that. But I know you and I in conversation, we had talked about, what would Thornton be doing still? And we're like, we both kind of agreed he would still be at school.
Yeah.
He'd be Van Wilder, basically.
Yeah. The only thing that I could see Thornton Millen doing after this movie is sticking around because he found the next fun party time thing to do in life. So why would he leave?
Right. So he basically everyone loves him. Everyone knows him. We could have like, he's continued to like his company is thriving. Maybe Jason is now like kind of overseeing things at the company, and the company's thriving and doing really well. So he keeps donating to the school and like, so basically he's known and loved by everybody, just like he was in the first movie. Because like he's really built this school up, like he's given them a huge reputation. He's added a bunch of like buildings and equipment and stuff like with his generous donations. So he's like one of the most beloved, students at the school. And it's almost like a novelty, like, at Grand Lakes University, where we have the Thornton Fraternity Row, we have the Thornton Science Building, we have like all these different things donated by Thornton Mellon.
There's like the Thornton Mellon School of Business and the Jason Mellon Natatorium and Pool Complex or whatever.
Yeah,
it's like, And I think that's pretty cool where it's the university itself has kind of become famous as being the home for these celebrity like permanent senior, the Thornton Mellon who, he was a freshman in the first movie. Now it's been a few years, and now he's sort of become this like super senior where, he's on year 5 or 6 or whatever, depending on the time frame in between. And, now it's like the early 90s, and he's become this. He's the big man on campus now. Maybe he has his own fraternity. Either he, joined one and took over, or he probably just started his own.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. Like, he bought a building, and made it his own fraternity, and everybody wants to be in Thornton's fraternity, type of thing. But for whatever reason, I don't know why the name Charlie stuck out for me for Chaz's little sister. I think it's just I liked the idea of the alliteration, Chaz and Charlie.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, it's kind of funny you mentioned that because, Chaz is often a nickname for Charles, right? And so obviously so is Charlie. So my mother's name is Charlene. And when she was younger, people would sometimes refer to her as Charlie. And she has an older brother whose name is Charles, but everyone called him Chuck. But so it's kind of funny.
Well, we can like have
Charles
that,
and Charlene.
Maybe Charlene is her real name and everyone just calls her Charlie, type of thing. But like I figure, she would go there and she would be the exact opposite of Thornton. Very like not, I don't want to say mousy, but kind of like more private. She's not a a busybody like Thornton is. She's not out there wanting to get in the mix of everything. She wants to go to school, she wants to make friends and all that, but maybe she's a little bit shy. So I want to play that duality of like, you have the one side being boisterous and super loud and bombastic, and the other one that's just like, I'm here for my school, my education. I'm a little bit nervous of all the craziness going on over there, but hey, I want to experience it a little bit, type of thing.
Yeah, I can kind of see her as being the nerdy academic type. I think that would make a lot of sense. Like, she's not going to come to school and be the sorority type. She's there to be serious about school,
Right.
Jason and Derek both were taking astronomy, and Derek took like dead languages, Latin and Sanskrit. And I think it was kind of obvious that Derek was really a good student and kind of a nerd and taking this stuff seriously, even though he was a goof in his personal life. They never really talked about whether he was failing, but I always got the impression that he was an academic at heart, and Jason probably wasn't. So I think you're right. I think you're on the right path. I'm right there with you, thinking that it'd be interesting if Jason ends up dropping out of school and then going to run his dad's business. And it turns out that that's what he was really good at all along. And it would be funny if we kind of have this subplot where Jason doesn't even really need to be in the movie outside of maybe a cameo at the beginning where he's like on the phone, trying to hurry his dad off the phone. Like, I got, big deals underway, blah, blah, blah. Some fast talking like Gordon Gekko shit on the phone. And, maybe Bert is working for him now, Lou is working for him now. It's like his bodyguard, and it'd be kind of funny if Thornton was kind of embarrassed that here he is, this big famous permanent college student, and his own son dropped out of school.
Right. Well, and one of the things that I think would be really funny is what if Chaz worked for him? So like maybe he works at one of the stores. So like, we could almost have it show like, because Jason was kind of a dick to Chaz in college in the first movie. Chaz was arrogant, but Jason was like, I don't like this guy. So he was like, so much so that even at the end, like, keep in mind, Chaz and Valerie were dating, like they were going to the parties together and all that. And then suddenly, Jason admits his undying love. She admits her undying love. And then he's in Chaz's face, like, she's with me now. And it's like, he's kind of a dick. Like, he just stole dude's girl and is a total dick about it. So I think it would be kind of funny to like see Chaz is out there in the real world. He's actually having to work for a living, whereas Jason was kind of handed a company, just like everything else. He was handed, and they talk about that in the first movie, that he's basically given everything he wants. And he's like, I love my dad, I don't care, type of thing. And it's like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but you're still, you still got a silver spoon up your ass, it's like, and that's kind of the situation here is like, maybe Jason, like, he sees himself as this the big businessman. It's like, fuck Chaz, he just works for me. So it's like we could have that little bit of duality where, even though he was perceived as the bully in the first movie, in real life, Jason is kind of the bully.
Yeah, I love this. Okay, so I got some light bulbs going off already. So what I'm picturing is this opening sequence where we have this beautiful aerial shot of the campus, and we see Chaz and Charlie driving up to the school, and then they stop and they have a little conversation where Charlie's like, "Oh, I'm nervous," and he's like, and Chaz is to be like, "Oh, you don't have to be nervous. This is going to be great. This is a great school, whatever." He's kind of talking up, and she's like, "Oh, I'm not nervous about like the schoolwork, but I don't know anyone here," and blah blah blah. So they're gonna have a little conversation where we're gonna learn that she's a little timid and a little bit afraid. So of course later on she's got to break out of her shell. We got to get there,
Oh, of course.
And then he can say something like, "This is a great school, trust me." And maybe she's like, "Yeah, but is it really a good school? The Mr. Mellon is still whatever." I can't remember what the exact dialogue should be, but there should be some mention of Chaz saying like, "Oh, don't worry about that guy. He's whatever. He's harmless." He kind of blows off Mellon as like it's this silly mascot. He's become this sort of silly mascot for the school, and then just to kind of introduce it in dialogue, and then in this conversation, maybe Chaz looks at his watch and he's like, "Oh, I gotta get back to the store," and maybe he like puts his little tall and fat name tag on, and like like he's the manager of like one of the retail stores or something like that. So again, he's sort of this like he has this workaday job, but it's instead of being in like construction or something, it's like he's in like retail middle management,
right,
which is kind of a dead end job for this guy who is this big man on campus fraternity type. And then I want to learn Charlie's personality, learn that Chaz works for the tall and fat corporation and boring ass retail, and then we mention Thornton so that we can then do a smash cut to a tall and fat TV commercial like we saw in the first movie, where now it's like this upgraded kind of higher end approach to it's not this comedic, making jokes about, the menu or whatever.
Right.
And it's like they're taking it a little bit more seriously, but then at the end you kind of see this like picture of Thornton like giving a thumbs up to the camera, and then we pan to see Thornton actually watching the commercial, and he's like, "Oh, I love that one," to this group of like, frat dudes and girls who are hanging out with him. And then he picks up the phone. He's like, "Oh, I got to call Jason and tell him how much I love that new commercial. It's so good." And he picks up the phone. He calls Jason, and Jason's like, "Oh, Dad, I can't talk now." He's got like, you hear phones ringing in the background, and Bert's holding people away from the office. Like he's busy, he's flipping papers. He's this busy businessman. And he says something like, "Oh, like, I got this meeting. I got to get on a plane by 6, and then I got to get back for the weekend because Val and I are going skiing with the whatever, and and so he's sort of like going through this fast-paced spiel of how busy and successful his life is. He's rich and he's married to Val and going on ski trips, and he's sort of increased the class of the company as a whole. But at the same time, he's blowing off his dad the way he blew off his dad in the first movie. And I think this would be a really good way to kind of introduce our players.
Right. No, I agree. I actually like all of that. I would like to add one thing just to kind of like show the animosity between Jason and Chaz is like while this whole thing is going on, maybe we have Chaz like show up to the store that he's like the manager of, right?
Okay.
And have like one of the employees be like, "Dude, you're late. He's here," type of thing, and be like, "Oh crap." And like he goes into his office, and then like maybe Jason walks in, or maybe Jason's already in there, sitting there on the phone, and he's like, "Dad, I gotta go." And he gets off the phone, then he gets up and he starts talking to Chaz and being like, "Your numbers are down, blah blah blah," and kind of like gives him this whole dissertation about like your store isn't performing to the standards that we expect. Like in other words, get your shit together or you're fired. So kind of like. Just to kind of to show that Jason is still kind of a dick to Chaz.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Okay, so let's do this. Let's hang on to that scene for a second. I love the scene. But so let's do this intro. But while Jason's on the phone, instead of saying, whatever he's saying to kind of like rush his dad off the phone, maybe he says like, "Oh, I'm busy, and and Valerie's got that art opening tomorrow," or whatever, blah blah blah. And maybe he like looks at his schedule. He's like, "Oh, hey, good news. or Lou hands him his calendar and he's like, oh, hey, good news. I'm going to be in your neighborhood tomorrow, doing an inspection. So maybe I'll see you this weekend. And click, Right. And then Thornton's like, oh, yeah, my big successful son. We go back to him. And then let's do the whole the big soaring early 90s music. We do the title of the music, the movie comes up on screen and we see Thornton kind of doing this little montage around the campus as he's walking around in his bathrobe and coffee, just kind of glad handing everybody. And we kind of see what he's got going on now. He walks out of his fraternity and maybe there's a sorority that's right next door, or whatever. Right. It's this kind of silly situation. And he walks around campus and he's saying hi to everybody. And it's this real sort of happy moment of oh, look how cool and successful he is now. But now he's just at the school doing it instead. And, maybe he sees, Sally Kellerman and gives her a little peck and he goes to get his coffee, whatever. We just kind of do this cool little montage scene of oh, he's a big man on campus,
Well, and real quick, just because, of the nature of the first movie, when he passes by the sorority, we should have sorority girls, they don't have to be topless or anything, but just maybe waving their bra out the window at him Thornton. He's oh, hey, girls, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And, does the wipes his brow with a big old grin and keeps on walking and then meets up with Sally Kellerman, like you were saying. But just, to have those little things peppered throughout, still showing that everybody loves Thornton, the entire fucking campus.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe there's a scene where he runs into Derek and he kind of gives him a little bit of shit. Oh, I liked your hair better when it was blue. Because now maybe he's real slicked and fancy Italian suit.
The British mod look.
Yeah, just he's totally gone the other direction to being super put together and well groomed, but high end, he's putting money into it. And maybe Thornton says something to him oh, hey, Derek, I liked you better when you had the blue hair. And then Derek's hey, don't forget, we got the test in astrophysics today or whatever. We find out that Derek is working there now. He's a teacher's assistant or a first year professor or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then Thornton says something oh, hey, you got to give me an A for old time's sake. And he's nah, we're not doing that anymore or whatever. This little exchange of dialogue where it's Thornton's still going to kind of be hey, can I get that easy A? You're my boy, you're my buddy, you're my pal. And Derek's nope, you're not going to get me an easy A for me. You got to, learn in my class. We already learned that lesson. And I think that'd be kind of a fun little character piece too. And then that way we get to have Derek still in the movie. It's just this kind of, side character that we can use to have some interesting conversations when we need to explain things,
No, absolutely. No, I like that. And plus any reason to put Robert Downey Jr. in something, I'm all for.
Yeah, exactly. And then we do the cut to, you said, now that we've introduced the school, and maybe during all of this, we see Charlie get to her boring ass beige dorm and get set up and meets her annoying roommate, so she's having the exact opposite experience that Thornton is having.
I have an idea for her roommate. I immediately I have this in my notes of things to pitch. I don't know why the name Allison stuck in my brain for this character, but she should be the total party girl who absolutely fucking loves the party Thornton throws. So because I want to have her try to convince Charlie oh, come on, you got to come to these parties, they're so much fun, blah blah blah, you'll love it, blah, constantly trying to get her to go to the parties while Charlie is trying to study. She's trying to do her homework. And eventually I have a scene in mind where eventually she gives in and goes to one of the parties, but it's of course not going to be what it seems.
Yeah. So Charlie's reminding me a lot of Becca from Son-in-Law, Pauly Shore's Son-in-Law.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God, I haven't thought about Son-in-Law in so long.
So this would be great. So we kind of have this, this sequence where we see Thornton's living his best life at college. Charlie is immediately off to a bad first impression, off on a bad foot. And then maybe during this little exchange where she meets the annoying roommate, Allison can say something oh, you're just in time. Thornton's having one of his big parties tonight. And then Charlie can be I don't know, I haven't heard great things about the melons or something. And then we cut to that scene where you were talking about where Chaz goes to the store and he walks in and his, his assistant manager is what are you doing, man? You're late. He's already here,
Yes. No. Oh my God. I love that. Okay. So what we can do is we can show before we get to that scene, right? We show Thornton, maybe you already said, you have him leave his fraternity, all that, the whole opening you were talking about, but let's push the Thornton calling Jason until right before this scene. So so have maybe he goes and maybe he's talking to the dean, Like he goes and he's like, hey, Dean, and he's chatting with him, and the dean has, the TV on in his office, and he's like, oh, Mr. Mellon. They share a cup of coffee and are chatting and all that. And he's like, hey, look, it's one of my son's new commercials.
Oh, yeah.
And we pan up, we see the commercial, they both love it. They think it's great, and then he's like, hey, do you mind if I use your phone? And he's like, oh, by all means, go ahead, sir. Because the dean's still kissing his ass because he's throwing money at the college. So he picks up the phone, he calls Jason. We see that whole scene where Jason is on, he's in the office. He's talking to his dad and being like, oh, yeah, we got this plan and that plan and blah, blah, blah. So we see that, right? And then we have the scene with so we cut away from that. We have Charlie and Allison talking. We get the whole, we meet Allison, she's the crazy, early 90s party girl. She wants Charlie to come to all the parties with her. And she mentioned specifically that Thornton is throwing a big start of semester party tonight.
Perfect.
And she's like, oh, I don't know. I've heard bad things about the Mellons. And then cut to the scene where Chaz is showing up to the store, and have just said, the assistant manager being like, dude, he's here already. What are you doing? And then we see Chaz walk toward the door, cut to Jason, still talking to his dad. We see the door open, and then he just smirks and he's like, Dad, I gotta go. And he hangs up.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And then he lays into Chaz. So we get this whole oh, look, Jason and Thornton, they're so happy and everything's great. And then Charlie's, apprehensive and nervous, and we see Chaz being all nervous, and then we see why. So it's like, fuck, out in the real world, these wealthy, charismatic motherfuckers usually mean bad news for somebody.
Yes, I love that. I love that message too. And sort of seeing how Chaz, who was this rich, probably trust fund baby at college, but in the real world he has to get a real job. And then Jason just gets handed a real job where he has all this power, and he wasn't doing anything. He was in school fucking around, taking astronomy and stuff. What does that have to do with what he's doing right now? So I love this turnaround. So of course, just a small detail correction in the conversation between Thornton and Jason, it has to be something well, Dad, don't you remember? I'm already in town. I got meetings, but I'll be busy. I'll see you this weekend. And then maybe Thornton's trying to convince him, oh, come to the party tonight. It'll be perfect. It'll be like old times. And he's like, oh, I don't know, Dad, maybe. Oh, I gotta go.
Yes. Oh yeah, I love it. Because then we also were juxtaposing the original, where Thornton was always trying to get his son to to do stuff with him, and eventually he kind of gave in, was like, okay, be at school with me, blah blah blah. But we see that his son is still kind of pushing away from him. As much as Thornton wants to be there for him, he's pushing away still. Yeah,
but now for different reasons. Now because Jason has the life that he kind of probably secretly wanted, and of course he hasn't learned his lesson, because he's just taking the handout that Mellon gave him, just like he hands out money and gifts to everybody else in the world too. So yeah, this is good. Okay, so from here, I don't have any particular scenes. I think we've kind of laid out the first, 15 minutes of the movie or something like that.
Yeah.
We've laid out these first handful of scenes that I think introduce all the characters that we're going to care about, that we're going to focus on. And now we have to kind of put Charlie and Thornton through some contrasting situations where obviously, and I'm kind of talking in broad strokes here, right? Where obviously maybe Thornton should, finally learn some kind of a lesson, but he's going to be kind of the antagonist to our protagonist, Charlie, who's going to have to come out of her shell a little bit and find, I'm assuming the end goal here is for her to find some happy medium between, hey, you can, be this academic that you want to be, but enjoy life a little bit, loosen up.
and that's the thing. I actually have a couple of scenes in mind. The one I'm thinking, so okay, so we have this party that's happening at the start of the semester, a big start of semester party. So maybe Charlie doesn't want to go, but Allison is really on her ass. You got to go, you got to come, blah, blah, blah. So maybe she goes and she just doesn't have a good time. She's out of her element. She's kind of standing there. No one's being outwardly nasty to her, but she's a wallflower. Sure. She's kind of sitting there. She's very timid, drinking. We see Thornton running around. Maybe we could have another, pick another band that was popular at the time playing in his frat house. And hell, maybe we could even up and be like, hey, Bruce Springsteen's here, something like that. Just have some big name playing in a frat house. And have like everybody is so impressed with Thornton, and Charlie just feels like a fish out of water. So she eventually leaves and she goes back to her dorm and is like, back in the books, and like have Allison like pop in, like, where were you? Like, you missed all the fun, blah, blah, blah. Like, just kind of showing that she doesn't feel like she fits in here. Now, we have to show, like, obviously there's going to be some kind of love interest character, right? But it's not going to go the way you think. So let's have some, I don't know, some frat guy. Maybe he's like the beefy jock with the heart of gold type of thing. So we have, I don't know, we call it like Jake. We'll just call him Jake.
Yeah,
so,
Jake works. Somebody that's like similar to her older brother, similar to Chaz, right? He's kind of, maybe he's on the football team or on the swim team, kind of athletic, and maybe he's the kind of guy that she thinks that she should be with, and he's cute,
Yeah, it's definitely it's kind of the quote unquote ideal dream guy. Sure. He's like, he's good looking. He's on he's on the football team. Everybody loves him. Like, everyone likes this guy. And, she's like, oh, he'd never give me the time of day. But I want at some point to have him give her the time of day. Like, maybe he comes up to her and starts talking to her and starts kind of trying to schmooze her up a little bit. Maybe it's something as simple as like, hey, I see you in the library all the time. Like, you seem to really know your stuff. I have the hardest time with Professor So-and-so's class, like something like that, and have him just kind of like set up a study date, and then one thing leads to another, and he gives her a little peck on the cheek type of thing. And it's looking like there's this love blossoming. And we find out like he's in Thornton's frat, like maybe we see like Thornton talking to him later. He's like, hey, I haven't seen you around lately. And he's like, oh, I'm talking to somebody. He's like, hey, good man, that type of thing, is slapping him on the back. And, everything seems on the up and up, right? And then we have like, a scene where we see the two of them kind of hanging out and him explaining to her like, hey, there's this party coming up. Maybe it's like the next month or something, like, hey, we're having this party at my fraternity. It's kind of a little lower key, though. It's not as big as the other parties. Like, so it's invite only, and have him like invite her to be his date to the party. So she's like all excited. Maybe Allison's pissed off because she's like, well, how come you got invited and I didn't? Like, I've been going to Thornton's parties forever, and blah, blah, blah. Like, have it be this whole thing where it's like, Charlie's like, wow, I am finding my way here. I'm feeling really good. And have her get there, and there's just a couple of other girls that aren't that attractive, and have her find out it's a pig party.
Oh no.
And that this guy was a total prick and just fucking wrecks her, right? Like, it's emotional damage all the way around. Maybe Thornton doesn't realize what's going on. He's just like, hey, it's a party, everybody drink up type of thing. He's having a blast with the girls in the other room, like just chatting with people. She gets her heart broken. She calls her brother. He's fucking pissed. He's like, those damn melons, like type
yes, of yeah, because he's gonna blame it on Thornton for like creating this scenario, and like, he doesn't know much about this Jake, Jake the jerk.
Exactly, Jake the jerk.
Maybe I'm on the wrong track here, but what if at some point we see when Charlie goes to one of these parties with Allison, maybe there's this like bulletin board and it's like flyers for parties and room for rent and my band is playing and blah, blah, blah. But maybe there's these like Polaroids of these girls who, have like little mustaches and shit drawn on them, or pig noses drawn on them, yes. and Charlie asks like, what are these? And Allison's like, oh, just the boys are so silly. Those are like, they call them the piggy girls, they're the stuck up nerds that don't want to come to our parties. And, basically because, they're not cute enough to like get with the boys or whatever. It's this sort of like airheaded line that she's going to throw off. It's going to seem like, oh, frat boy shenanigans, locker room talk. And then, a little bit later on, we're going to see that that's exactly what it is. Jake seems like this charming guy. Allison's dating one of the other like football guys. And then it's like, oh, hey, we're having like he tricks her into saying it's like, oh, we're having like a Greek council dinner or something. Oh, it's going to be at Thornton's house. Maybe she's a little bit nervous, but they're hanging out. They have dinner. Maybe it's like a little slow dance. And then maybe it's like suddenly there's a spotlight on her face. People start laughing, and then like now they're taking pictures of her, and they get these really like terrible unflattering photos of her like squinting and into this bright light, and then they get these Polaroids and they're laughing ha 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 ha, and you see him like draw a pig nose on and like pin it to the board, and some bullshit like you gotta like earn your spot around here, honey, or some bullshit, and of course Charlie's gonna run off like screaming and crying.
Of course, yeah, and then like I wanted to kind of culminate with her calling Chaz like in tears, obviously upset, and have the two of them plan to get back at the fraternity. Now we're gonna turn the comedy up a little bit. We can turn this film more or less into kind of something along the lines of the movie Dirty Work with Norm Macdonald. Like
nice. Yeah.
So it's like have them be like, all right, we're gonna fuck up this frat. And have them like constantly pulling pranks on various members of the fraternity, including Thornton. Maybe he'd, like have something like his, he goes to get in his hot tub and it's filled with Jello, and he's like, "Hey, what the hell? Who did this?" Type of thing. Like just weird little pranks, and just have them keep fucking with him. Eventually culminating with the fact that we, Thornton and Jason maybe are forced to realize that like, money and charisma, they won't get you everything. They won't win you the respect of everybody. And you actually have to treat people, like people instead of things that can be bought.
Yeah, that's perfect. I like this. Yeah, okay. So I think it would be fun if when Charlie calls Chaz, we see that he's wearing like a visor and like a headset microphone or something, and he's talking to her on the phone. They're talking and she's crying and he's trying to make her feel better, and then somebody says something. He's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, honey. I gotta go, but I'm gonna come. I'll be there tomorrow, I swear." And you pan out and he's working at like Burger King or someplace because he gets like fired by Jason, right? And now he's got this stupid like fast food uniform on, and then. So yeah, have him come out to the college the next day, and she tells him the sob story, and he's like, "Look, we're not gonna take this lying down. These guys were bullies when I went to school here, and they're still bullies now. That'd be kind of funny for him to say."
Yep. Well, yeah, because everyone perceived Chaz to be the bully, but when was he the bully?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it'd be fun if they kind of like launch this plan. Charlie gives them a little like smirk through the tears of like, "Yeah, let's do this," and then to your point, they kind of launch into this, this sort of prank battle, or sort of a one-sided battle. But we can do another kind of a little montage, or at least put some music over seeing them kind of sneak around and set up, pranks. And what I want to see is we'll see that Chaz gets a job at the school in like the groundskeeping, right? So he's wearing a little hat and has a little, maybe he's picking up trash in a bag or something. That way, whenever we see him, he's kind of like always sneaking around, hiding behind bushes in his like uniform, but that's his excuse to be there,
I love the fact that you said that, because in my notes I have right here, Chaz will eventually get a job at the university so he can fuck with Thornton.
That's perfect. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And because he's like a groundskeeper or whatever, like he'd have keys to places that other people can't go, right? So maybe we see him like opening up like the back gate of the frat house, like they have a backyard that's like walled in, but he opens up the gate because he's got the keys, and he sneaks Charlie in there, and she's got a box of, I don't know, rats or something, whatever the prank is, right? So they're gonna go, they'll prank the frat in the same way that a lot of 80s movies were pranking sororities by setting up secret cameras and letting rats and fleas and stuff go inside the building, and like breaking the air conditioner or whatever, or the furnace, whatever it is. It starts off kind of innocent, and then we can escalate a little bit.
Well, I think like, okay, so one of the pranks should definitely be like they sneak into the fraternity while everybody's sleeping, and like put just like one of those like party sheep blow up dolls in Jake's bed and take a bunch of Polaroids of him.
Oh, fuck yeah, dude. They take down all the piggy pictures off the bulletin board, and it's just nothing but pictures of Jake, like, screwing this blow up sheep.
or like, maybe not even screw, just like he's like got his arm around it, like he's passed out, like he just finished. So they just kind of slipped it into the bed. Or we could do something like, maybe Jake maybe he's got a little dick or something, and they get a photo of him in the shower and post it. Just something to really fuck with this guy's day. And then we could do stuff like have them break into, one of the professor's offices and like have them rewrite Thornton's homework or something and turn it in. It's like just this ridiculous, ridiculous report, and he's like, what the hell, I didn't do this. Just have different things like that where they just keep fucking with them one after the next.
Yeah, I think it'd be a cool thing, a cool visual. Since this whole Polaroid picky party thing came up, what if we see at this first, whatever the first prank is, we see that all the picky photos are gone off the bulletin board, and there's a picture up of like, oh look, we let rats go in your building. It's a picture of like rats running everywhere, and then we see the picture of like Jake and the sheep, and we see a picture of some masked man swapping out the term paper, and it's like they're leaving like, haha, we got you, and we can slowly see their bulletin board get more and more of these Polaroids, and then Thornton's gonna he thinks it's hilarious because he's just like, oh, just kids being kids, and he's not really doing anything about it. And then maybe eventually somebody takes an incriminating photo of him, like maybe they send like a photo of him and a bunch of girls in the hot tub to like Sally Kellerman, right, to his girlfriend, and he supposedly had like turned a new leaf, and now he's they get him drunk at a party, and they get maybe Charlie gets some of these the girls that were in the piggy photos, hey, put on these bikinis and go take a photo with Thornton, and we'll like pull his pants down, take a picture of it, put on the bulletin board, and now Thornton's like, this means war.
Exactly.
And they can do the same thing. Maybe Chaz gets Jason in some incriminating photo, right? Like you said, maybe Jason does come to visit the campus, and they get him doing something stupid, or it could be something as simple as like they catch him at the urinal or pull his pants down, take a picture of him, and then now Jason's in on it, like okay, Lou, hold all my calls, like this is my business now, and
right.
So now we kind of have like Thornton and Jason. After they've been pranked a bunch of times, now they're like, okay, we got to get him back. We got to find out who's doing this so we can have like a conflict.
Maybe the whole thing should culminate with like there's a huge party going to be thrown on campus, and it's not by Thornton. Because remember, there was that thing that was in the first movie where Chaz was like, what's going on? This is normally the biggest party of the year. And they're like, yeah, but there's something going on at, over at the dorms. And basically like, he stole their thunder in the first movie and like threw this huge party. So maybe like Chaz and Charlie, they pull whatever strings they can, they get everyone in it, and they have this, they plan on throwing a huge party to rival like, maybe Thornton's, I don't know, Christmas break party or whatever it's going to be. And like, he's pissed because he's like, what the hell? Like, first they're going to fuck with me, now they're going to fuck with my party. Like, this ain't cool. And have them basically one up him on his own turf.
Oh, fuck yeah. So since Chaz works there and has like keys to shit, what if he goes to the leaders of the frat that he used to belong to and was just like, hey, we're frat brothers forever, right? You got to, I'll do you a solid, you do me a solid kind of thing. And so he basically tells them like, I'm going to get you the venue for the biggest party that this campus has ever seen. You got to bring the girls and the beer. I'm going to get you in. And it turns out that what it is it's like, picture that party from Real Genius that they had at that indoor swimming pool, know, and it's like, because they have these swim meets, so there's an indoor pool somewhere, right? So they have this, he's going to get them into this building they're not supposed to be in to throw, what is it, like the Hawaiian December like holiday throwdown or whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The big pool party, and that's going to be this huge party. So yeah, Thornton and his boys, they're throwing their like Christmas party. Like maybe Thornton comes in ho 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 dressed up as Santa Claus and is like, where is everybody?
Absolutely, yeah. And of course, we're gonna have the we're gonna have they have to make up at the end and realize the error of their ways, because it is a comedy. But yeah, no, I like this to have the party that rivals Thornton's, but using favors and whatnot instead of money to grease the wheel. So Chaz is showing like, hey, I know all these people. I've made connections with all these people. I'm going to call in favors from my friends instead of buying everybody. So I kind of like that message in particular.
So they're throwing a party kind of the old-fashioned way. Like, we're going to hand out flyers and word of mouth, and we're going to have this cool venue, and it's just going to be, girls and beer. That's all we need. Like, what else do you need for a big party? You don't need, like, maybe over at Thornton's frat, maybe there's a Christmas tree that's like 20 feet tall in like the big central hall of the foyer of their frat hall, and there's just piles and piles of presents, and there's all kinds of expensive decorations, and maybe he's got like a whole crew of like a serving crew serving food, and they're all dressed up as elves, and he's got like this big Santa sleigh inside. Like he just went all out, and he comes out dressed up as Santa Claus, and it's just like a couple of people standing around. So like it was like he threw all this money at this party, but everybody just wanted to go to the fucking pool bowl.
And of course, when he comes out, he has to be like, "All right, who wants to sit on Santa's lap?" Gotta have that kind of a joke.
Yeah, that's exactly perfect. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so this is good. So now we're gonna have our big showdown, I think, right? So I think Thornton and Jason should like storm off to go find their stolen party, and they get into this big like pool area, and everybody's having a great time, and they even see that like Allison's there. Some of the guys that normally we would have seen in earlier scenes, the background characters that would have been at their parties, and even Charlie's there like having a good time, and they kind of storm in and like, hey, like what's the meaning of this? You guys aren't supposed to be in here. And I think it'd be kind of funny if Thornton, the guy who doesn't live by anybody's rules, is suddenly like, oh, what are you guys doing in here? And
absolutely.
So it's like, and we're going to kind of see him like, oh, you got to shut this down. Like, this is ridiculous. You're going to, and because he's a swimmer, maybe he's like, oh, look at all this. You got all this beer in the pool. You're going to ruin everything. And now he kind of become like this spoil sport. Sorry.
A little bit of a killjoy.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, Jason's going to come in and be like, oh, like and maybe it's Jason's building. Like it's the Jason or the Jason Mellon natatorium. It's like has his name on the building, so that'd be really funny. And of course,
that's perfect.
We see Jason come in right next to Thornton, and he's like, oh, this is ridiculous. Like I paid for this whole building, and this is what you guys do. You treat it like this. And and they're just kind of living in their anger, and obviously under different circumstances they wouldn't care, but they're they're pissed off because of all these pranks or whatever. And maybe they see, I don't want them to see Chaz just yet, not exactly yet, but they gotta have somebody who they're going to kind of pin it on, like, oh, did you do this? You've been playing all these pranks, I'm not sure if they would necessarily know that it was Charlie, but so basically what I want to do is kind of have this reveal where, or maybe it's just something as simple as like, who is responsible for this? And then you see Chaz just turn around, and he's got like his straw hat on and his like Mai Tai with a little umbrella in it and his Hawaiian shirt on. And he's just like, hey, Melons, welcome.
Yes. And because we could have Jason, like maybe there's something, I can't think of a good nickname, but maybe there's some kind of demeaning name he refers to Chaz as in the beginning of the movie. I don't know why the phrase shitheel keeps coming to mind. Probably because there's movies where people get called shitheel, but it's like it could be something like that, like I don't know what he would call him.
I like that. No, that's kind of funny. Yeah, earlier on when Chaz goes in to get in trouble, maybe Jason's like, oh, if it isn't the shitheel himself. And it's this kind of offhand comment, but then later on when you see Chaz again, he's just like, shitheel. And he says it kind of like Newman.
See, I actually pictured it more like him being like, shitheel? Like, you threw this? Like, kind of almost like, but you're a nobody. How did you do this? Like, that type of...
Oh yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, he can say exactly that. Like, shitheel. Like, you don't even go to this school. Like, what are you doing here? And then maybe you see Chaz hug Charlie. It's like, I don't. Actually, I work here, but my sister goes here and she's having a great time. I'm throwing her a party. And and this is when he can get a little serious. Like, she went to one of your parties and you guys put her up on your piggy wall like she was some kind of animal, and now they're going to have this like serious conversation, this argument. And I don't necessarily know what all the dialogue's going to be, but obviously I feel like Thornton is going to be defending his frat, like, oh, hey, we're just trying to have a good time. I'm not always responsible for everything that happens. Kind of hinting that like his parties get a little rapey, but like it's not his fault,
Right.
And then Jason could be like, well, we put a lot of money into this school, and my dad is like a pillar of this, university community or whatever. And, a lot of people pay attention to the school. The enrollment is up because of him. And you guys should show him some respect, and he's kind of done this whole 180 because now the money's gone to his head. And
I like that you chose to say he should get some respect. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but that was good.
Totally unplanned, but that's perfect.
No respect.
No respect, But that's great. And of course, this is where Chaz is going to reveal, no, this school is a laughing stock because of you two. This used to be a respected university, and our fraternity, we were the national champions on the swim team and, famous divers, whatever, Chaz's argument is kind of that this university used to be this really great place to go because of the college life, and now people just come here because they want to party with rich people.
Yeah, and like maybe he could even make some kind of comment about like, I didn't buy my way in. He's like, like I worked hard. I got a swim scholarship to come here. Like maybe we can learn a little bit about Chaz's backstory. Like, I wasn't poor growing up, but I also wasn't rich like you, and he kind of maybe goes on to this whole thing of like he had opportunities, but not as many as Jason did. And he didn't squander the opportunities he had. He worked hard for what he got, and he continued to work hard even when life handed him a curveball, like when his parents passed away and, he was in charge of taking care of his younger sister and he had to grow up fast after college. And like maybe he kind of lays all that out and we find out that Chaz is kind of the working man that Thornton's dad used to be. And, maybe Thornton can realize like, like Jason, we've lost our way, kind of like something like that, where it's like everybody needs to learn a lesson at the end of the movie,
Yeah. No, I like this speech, let's not rush to the end of it, because I think this is good stuff. I think you're exactly right. Chaz kind of lays it out, maybe gets a little emotional, but angers are still flaring. So maybe he says something like, this used to be this great school, and I wanted to show my sister what it was like, to work hard. I didn't buy all of my success. I came to school on my scholarship that I got because I busted my ass on the swim team in high school, and I came here and I worked hard to get to the top of the heap. And then Jason says something, oh yeah, and look where that got you, like, working retail for me. Maybe Chaz says it's honest work, and I had to pay the bills to take care of my sister after our parents died, and I was doing really well. I worked my way up to regional manager or whatever until you fired me over taking the morning off so I could bring my sister to college. And then, Jason's like, oh, you weren't taking the job seriously. So you've always had it out for me, Jason. You've always, had it, had some grudge against me. But what did I ever do to you? And they kind of have their old bitter rivalry. They kind of have it out in this little argument. And, I think it should just kind of end with either, I don't know. Do you think it should end with the two of them just kind of nose to nose, their argument flaring, and then Thornton kind of breaks it up like, whoa, 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 whoa? Or, do we have Jason try and throw a punch like he did in the first movie, but this time, Chaz isn't going to get sucker punched and, he's going to, be able to like fight back. And I'm not sure what's the right message. Do we go to the violence?
You know what I think? I think we can meet in the middle. So have this thing where it's like, the back and forth, just like you said. Thornton's hearing all this for the first time and realizing, because he's thinking his son is, running this company great. He's treating his employees the way he treated his employees, where he was, like, hey, everybody gets a bonus, that type of thing, the way Thornton was doing. But meanwhile, Jason has become kind of a shrewd businessman, where it's like, the company is thriving, but he's not that great to people. Maybe he's a little bit of a dick. And have Jason go to take a swing at Chaz, and maybe Chaz does something like just palms his fist, like he grabs it and he's like, not this time, Melon, I'm not fighting you. And he puts his hand, pushes his hand down, and maybe this is where Thornton grabs Jason. He's like, Jason, we got to talk, son. And then have this whole this heart to heart moment where he realizes like, you've lost your way and I helped you get there. Like I was having too much fun type of thing.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think this is perfect. But I want to insert Lou, if I could, into this scene, right? Because I feel like Lou should be there, right? Like with Jason, he followed him to the school just like he did to Thornton in the first one. So during the scene, like Lou's there, he's just kind of like looming as the heavy while they're having it out yelling, and maybe Jason takes a swing at Chaz, and Chaz just kind of dodges it, like, I'm not going to do it. You're not going to bait me into it. Jason, like, I'm the better man, whatever, and then. Jason keeps yelling, and then maybe he goes to take another swing, and it's Lou who catches his hand.
Yes.
And he's like, listen to the man, Jason. I didn't want to say anything out of respect for your father. I've known him 30 years, but, you've become kind of an asshole.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. Maybe he does the whole thing like he does the whole the tough and sweet thing again. He's like, remember what I told you before? He goes, I'm sweet, but I'm also tough. Don't make me get tough, Jason. Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe Jason yells at him for like getting in the middle of it, and then he says that, and then and then Thornton kind of walks over. He's like, Jason, come with me. We got to have a talk. Yeah, exactly, right. And they kind of walk over to the side, and they have their little chat, and we can kind of focus on them for a minute. And Thornton has he's seen the light. Oh, I can't believe I was just trying to enjoy my retirement or whatever, and let you have the company, but it's all gone to your head, Jason. I'm kind of picturing like one of the sort of denouement scenes we're going to get to. Like, let's find out where our characters end up. But I'm kind of stuck now on how we wrap this up and what kind of redemption does Charlie get out of it? Because I feel like so far we were focusing on her, yet the character struggles have been between like Chaz and Jason and Thornton. So how does Charlie's arc come to a head in this scene? I'm not sure I see it.
Yeah, no, that is difficult because she was set up as the main character at the start, and we kind of went off with Chaz more or less. So I think with Charlie, maybe it needs to be just like we kind of remove these barriers, like we remove the melons from the situation. We remove all that and let her actually do the college education that she wanted at the start, which was just I'm not here to party. I'm not here to be popular. I'm here to get an education. I'm here for the college experience. And maybe have that like when we do our whole thing where we show where all the characters are, maybe we could show like she's happily enjoying college, like she's made friends. We see like her walking to class, people like, "Hey Charlie, how's it going?" That kind of thing. Like we see that she's maybe throughout like the pranks, like with her hiring people to like fuck with other people or to fuck with the melons, It also sounds weird when I keep saying fuck with the melons, but we keep we keep that up. So like we see her meeting people throughout the movie, and then like at the end, she's kind of known. Like, she's still the quiet girl, she's still doing her thing, but everybody likes her. Like maybe she's kind of had that arc of like transitioning from the mousy little wallflower to, not really the popular kid, but the kid everyone knows, because every school has that guy or girl where it's like they don't really fit into any one crowd, but everyone just kind of likes them.
Yeah, for sure. So I think this is really good, and I think we could probably get away with having her arc be a little bit less dramatic. I think it could be something as simple as back up a little bit. I like where you're going with the end, but let's back up to this big argument at the pool party where we have Lou catch the fist. And Jason and Chaz are still kind of arguing with each other. Lou kind of calms things down, but maybe Chaz says something kind of biting, I don't know what it is exactly. Maybe he says something now like, who's the shitheel now, Melon, or something. He kind of takes the low road in saying something shitty to Jason while his temper is flaring. And let's have her lose her temper. Maybe she starts screaming like, "Oh, shut up, all of you. I just wanted to go to school. I just wanted to have, the college experience like everybody always talks about. I don't care about parties, and I don't care about boys, and I don't care about frats and sororities and all this bullshit. I just wanted to go to school, and to become whatever." We never really talked about like what her major was,
right.
Like I just wanted to go to school to become a, scientist or whatever. And I got caught up in all of this nonsense with playing pranks and getting revenge. It was never about revenge, and whatever. And she just kind of have her scream at them like, "Oh, you kind of got me all caught up in your family nonsense from years ago, and I completely lost my way." And just kind of have her, storm off. And that's when Thornton's like, "All right, Jason, we got to have a talk over here," and now things are kind of calmed down. And maybe I think Chaz needs to go and have a little chat with Charlie. Like, "Oh, you're totally right. You had one bad experience, and I sucked you into this revenge plan because I got fired and I was down on myself, and I thought it would be I thought I could get back at the melons for fucking up my life, and all I did was fuck up your life and did the same thing that they were trying to do. So like, let me make it up to you," or whatever. Kind of realized that Chaz probably took things a little bit too far as well.
Yeah, no, I like that, because we could have the whole thing of like, once again, it turns into the pissing match between the popular guys. And meanwhile, this wallflower is just like, fucking stop. Maybe she could even say, you're not the main characters. Maybe she could even bring that up of like, you always steal the spotlight. Like maybe she says to Chaz, like, you've been doing it my whole life. You always steal the spotlight, and it's like, I've always rooted for you and you've always had my back, but you always steal the spotlight and make it about you. And then maybe she points at Thornton and she's like, and why does everything have to be about you? If the a single person doesn't like you, you try to buy them off. Like, it's okay if people think you're a rich asshole, live your life. You've been handed a great one. And maybe like turns to Jason and like tells him off, be like, and you need to realize you've had a silver spoon up your ass since the day you were fucking born. And like go on this whole thing about like, be proud, be happy of who you are, but don't shit on everyone around you. Everyone else has to work for a living. Be thankful that you don't. And then have her storm off and have all these guys who are fucking waving their dicks around be like, oh shit. Like, we got told. And bring it back to like the big men on campus are really the fucking children.
Exactly. And it was really all about a fucking school. It's a school. It should always have been about the school, not about all this nonsense. And okay, I like where this is going. And we talked about Derek being a teacher at the school and how we should kind of throw him in there so we could have some dialogue sequences and learn some shit. So let me pause and back up. So we just back up to this whole prank war sequence in the middle of the movie where at one or maybe two situations, we should see that Charlie's grades are slipping, right? Because she's focusing so much on the stupid prank war with Chaz, and all she wanted to do is come to school we got to pick something. Maybe all she wanted to do is like be a teacher, right? And so she's in Derek's class, and Derek is teaching like rhetoric or
she wants to be an art history teacher or something.
Okay, there you go.
Because that feels like something that Derek would teach.
Perfect. Yeah, that's perfect, right? Exactly. So, and maybe there's a sequence where we see her in class and she's real tired because she'd been up the night before, like sneaking into the frat house to do something stupid. And then, that's classic sequence where the teacher is like handing out graded papers and she's got like a B- and she looks up at Derek and he just shakes her head like, you're slipping, Osborne, or whatever her last name is,
Mm-hmm.
and then we see that again maybe later on, same thing happens. She goes up to him and she's like, I don't know what Derek's last name was, but like Professor Derek, like
Lutz.
That's what it was. Yeah. It's like, oh, Professor Lutz, you gotta like let me take this test again. Like, I'm distracted. Like my brother's in town. Blah blah blah. Or no, she can't say that because we don't want Lutz to know. Whatever. She gives some excuse, and he's just like, you're not taking it seriously, Osborne. Like, or maybe he says like, just like your brother, like you're not taking it seriously. You're here, for the parties. I see you over at the Melons all the time, and so that's gonna crush her. Like, oh no, I can't believe I'm just like them. And then. But she doesn't learn the lesson yet. She's still kind of caught up in the prank war. So then later on, so now we're going to see this whole thing come to her head where she's just like, I just wanted to go to school. And all she was there for was to learn. And she gets caught up in this dick waving contest. And then, of course, Charlie and Chaz are going to have this heart to heart. So then we're going to kind of cut to we kind of had our big climax with this whole argument. Now we got to kind of cut to see what's going to happen to everybody. And maybe, I don't know that you tell me, do we need to have some kind of like a victory scene where maybe Charlie goes to Lutz's class to like take the exam and, she's real worried and he's like, I don't know, like you got to ace this one to pass my course. And then of course she's going to ace it like, woo. So she gets that, you got to have that tension victory. But something like that. I just kind of want to show that like without all the distractions in her life, she's able to turn it back around.
I almost think that we don't even need something that severe. I think what we should do is like, after we have the various heart-to-hearts, like we have, Chaz and Charlie talk, we have Thornton and Jason talk, maybe like Lou and Derek are both there, and they're kind of like commenting on, like maybe Derek is honest with Mr. Mellon. And he tells him like, hey, I've just my 2 cents, what I've seen over the years with you, and kind of like explains to him like how he's never taken it seriously, but just because he hasn't taken it seriously doesn't mean all the other students coming here don't, that kind of a thing. And like, maybe we could have this whole back and forth. And so then we go like, we fast forward to that spring. So it's like, that was around Christmas and it's like, the spring semester or whatever. And we see the whole thing with Charlie, like she's doing better. Maybe, we see a scene where she's leaving class and Derek is like, would you say Osborne was her last name?
I'm pretty sure that was Chaz's last name, Osborne.
Osborne. Yeah. So maybe he's like, Osborne, good job. So she's like, she's doing better. And then like we see, we kind of see where all the characters are. Maybe we see Chaz, has like, maybe he becomes the new diving coach or the new swim coach. Like Thornton pulls a few strings and gets him as like in a teaching position there. And so like he's kind of like bringing up the next group of swimmers, and it's like, and they kind of bury the hatchet, and then like maybe we see Jason is working like working in the store, like he's not the manager, and maybe Thornton's like, you got to do a couple years, doing the grunt work first, like that was the mistake I made.
That's so perfect because I had the exact same thing.
Yes.
I had the exact same idea where I was like, we got to have Jason go earn his dues. He skipped that step, so he's got to go backwards. And yeah, we got to have a scene where we see him kind of like a close up of his face, and he's like, "Oh, come on, Dad," whatever. And they're kind of talking. He's like, "I already know the business. I don't need to do this." And obviously Thornton's going to tell him like what you just said, like, "No, you got to pay your dues," but whatever. And then have him like put his little name tag on, just like we saw Chaz do at the beginning, and it's like trainee or something on his little name tag. And then you pan out, you see him behind the counter, and like some big guy comes in. He's like, "You got this in 56 long,"
or we could see him like doing the same thing. Like we'll have the conversation with Thornton and Jason, right? And him telling him, he's like, "Oh, come on, Dad, I don't want to." And then like we see the close up of his name tag, right? And we pan out and we see him like trying desperately to like measure around this like big guy's waist with the tape. And, and have it be like, "Oh, excuse me, sir, pardon me, hold on." He's trying to like get her, because we got to have a fat joke in there since it was so prominent in the first movie.
Yeah, that's probably good. At this point, we can kind of lighten up a little bit, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we see him like having to pay his dues. But it's like he still has a job. We know he has a job that he's going to go back to being a fucking CEO. It's just one of those things where it's like, first he's got to pay his dues. He's got to do a year of grunt work. So and of course, like, Thornton learns his lesson that, maybe he needs to stop living so vicariously through these kids and maybe like become, a responsible adult type of thing. So maybe instead of being the big party guy, maybe he finally graduates and moves on. And we see okay, we end the movie with like a commercial for Thornton starting his own college.
Yeah.
Come on down to Mellon U.
And it'd be really cool if we go all the way full circle back to the beginning. So maybe it's like a business school. So he's going to start his own business school, and it's like he's going to say, "Oh, we got classes in accounting and economics, and maybe there's trades like, textiles and tailoring or whatever." So he's kind of going back to his roots with, "I'm going to teach people how to do the job that I learned how to do, but you have to start somewhere. So you can't just start off rich. You got to start somewhere." Like, and he started working in that tailor shop years ago when he was a kid. So he'll start a school where he's going to teach people how to do that. And I think that'd be really cool.
No, absolutely. And I think that's kind of a fun, like, stinger almost, is like, he listened to his dad about the, having to have an education, but he's using his life experience to be like, yeah, you can have an education. Like, you need an education, but you also have to know how the real world works.
Yeah, for sure. I think that'd be a great way to end it. And I just want to say one more thing as we have just ended our movie with that. But the last scene that we see with Charlie prior to this, when we see Professor Lutz say something to her like, "Hey, good job, you aced it," or whatever, or she passes that big final that she was worried about. So she's like happy because, again, it's like graduation, right? So we're going to see Thornton graduate. So maybe she passes that big final. And let's just have a little scene where, some guy sitting next to her in class is just kind of like, "Hey, good job." And she turns, and it's some like cute, nerdy looking guy. And he just kind of gives her a little shy smile, and she turns away and kind of smirks to herself, and just kind of end it with like, okay, things are looking up for her. Cause she wasn't really into this Jake dude, but she was there at college trying to like, have the whole experience of go to school, like have a boyfriend, grow up. And I think it'd be kind of fun to just kind of throw that in there, but it's a nerdy guy.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I like having a happy ending for Charlie. So
Yeah, okay, I think we got there. We spent a long time talking about the movie itself and all the great character actors and kind of bitching about the actual back to school plot. And I think I like this. I think if we were to do something like this as a sequel and kind of have this little two-parter, that honestly, I think it kind of fixes some of the problems in the first movie because we get to explore those character arcs a little bit better. I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, no, this is, and I feel like we say this all the time about being nervous before the episode, but like this is one of those ones where I was like, I don't really know what to do with this because, as I said, the first movie is a fun movie, but there's no point. So the thing was trying to figure out a point. It's like, so, yeah. And yeah, I think you're right. Like exploring the failed character arcs of the first movie and fleshing them out a bit in the second movie, I feel like that gives a lot more credence to the first film.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is another one of those ones where we picked a topic just for some arbitrary reason, like, oh, it's back to school. Sure, let's do it back to school. And we put it on the schedule and didn't really think about it that much.
Because like legitimately, like I was telling you off the air, I was trying to watch this movie and it like life has been so busy lately that I watched it in a couple pieces. And then I was sitting there trying to write notes and I'm like, I have no idea what to do. So I just like quickly wrote down several scenes and a few ideas and was like, I hope this works. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was kind of in the same boat too. Like I knew that I liked the movie and I was looking forward to watching it again, but I wasn't really sucked into it. I wasn't really hooked. I mentioned watching Point Break again today, which I've seen 100 times, but I was instantly like, oh, I'm in it. Like I'm keyed into the action because I think it really starts off on a strong foot. But Back to School was kind of a little bit of a slow burn, like a character kind of movie, like we mentioned already ad nauseum. And yeah, I didn't really know what to do with it either. I actually had a bunch of different ideas, but all of my ideas were kind of briefcase ideas, by which I mean you could have applied it to any movie. Yeah, it was, do the sequel where the characters swap places, or, do a reimagining where, like, you change the ending and, Thornton fails, or, where we ended up where it's kind of like, yeah, just do the sequel where it's like the younger sibling or the cousin, or we kind of did like the Teen Wolf 2 of Back to School.
Yep.
But it's like they're all kind of these like generic sequel or remake ideas where they kind of apply to anything. They're not really specific to Back to School, but I like where we went with it. And for me, it was really centered on the Chaz character, who I thought kind of got the shit end of the stick in the first movie. And I thought that was the hook that I latched onto. There's got to be something more to do with William Zabka.
Right. Yeah, and I completely agree. I feel like that character was like a nothing character in the first movie. Yeah, they really didn't do anything. Like he was there to be the generic bad guy, but he wasn't even that.
Yeah. I know he was much more interesting in Just One of the Guys and in Karate Kid. One of these days we got to do something with Just One of the Guys. It's going to be super problematic, but I don't know. I still secretly love it anyway. But every time I think about trying to do something with that, I'm just like, I don't know. Like there's a lot of landmines there.
Oh, yeah. Although I do love the reveal at the end where I always forget the actor's name that plays the friend. He's like, "You're a chick. Where the fuck do you get off being a chick?" Like,
you got tits?
Yeah, that's what it was. You got tits. That's what I forgot. But I love the shocked reaction.
Yeah.
That sequence is great.
It's a great movie. I think it's a quintessential 80s movie, and it's teenagers doing way too adult shit, and it's like super sketchy and both politically and like socially problematic. It's one of those movies that would never get made these days. Yeah. But we all secretly love it,
The other two I always think of from the 80s that are like, wow, these are super problematic, but like I fucking loved them as a kid, was Loverboy and Can't Buy Me Love.
Oh, fuck yeah, dude. Patrick Dempsey all day long. Yes.
I fucking loved those movies, but looking back as an adult, I'm like, that's a little fucked up.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to watch Loverboy tonight, I think.
Just extra anchovies.
Extra anchovies, exactly. Oh man, yeah. Maybe one of these days we'll do something with that. Like maybe we can play around with the the sort of like sexual and gender politics in those movies, and that could be kind of a fun exercise. We can kind of like woke them,
Right.
Um,
or do some kind of like weird Quantum Leap style crossover, where we have a character that's really the same character in all these movies.
Yeah, exactly. He's McDreamy.
Exactly.
But since we're going into spoopy season now here in 2023, it's August now, which is like almost September, and September's almost October. So it's almost Halloween. But we do have one more kind of back to school centric episode. Not back to school, the Dangerfield movie, but
the theme of going back to school.
Yeah, the new school year themed movie. We got one more of those planned, and then we'll kick off our spoopy season multi-episode series, which we always do just because we say that we don't try to always make everything a horror movie, but it's more fun when we do. Let's be honest.
Because you can do so much crazy shit in a horror movie. But I mean, we definitely oscillate between horror and comedy. So it's like this one, for example. I mean, clearly we were focusing on a comedy and trying to give it a message. But we've done that a lot too, like where we're like, all right, let's do another comedy, or let's take a comedy and add some danger to it. But yeah, I'm a horror apologist, as anyone who knows me knows. So I am all about getting to spoopy season, and I can't wait for our next episode. I think our next episode is going to be a lot of fun. I completely forgot it was on the list. Mm-hmm. Until we were texting the other night, and I asked you, like, I remember some of the things that we have planned, but what's the next one? And then you told me, I was like, oh shit, yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, so. That's awesome too. I also kind of forgot about it until I read the schedule, and one of our other Halloween specials that's going to come out in October is another one that you reminded me of, and I'm like, fuck, I forgot to put it on the schedule. It's definitely got to get in there because I don't want to miss the season this year because of the theme of the movie that we're going to play off of. But yeah, the episode we have today. Part of the reason why this was just on the schedule and forgotten about was because we try to make sure that we schedule in topics that aren't horror specific. We got to keep the comedies in there. We got to put some dramas in there. We got to do some stuff that isn't movie related every once in a while because, the movies are fun and it's an easy way to tell a story, understanding that you have like a 90-minute cinematic limitation to like get in and get out. I think that works well for our format. But it's fun to riff on comics and TV and video games once in a while. So yeah, we had this on the schedule because it's like, okay, we can't just keep doing horror every single time, even though it's fun. we got to put something else in there. And the next one too is also comedy focused, but we made it kind of dark. So it's like we're just gonna kind of ease into spooky season with a little bit of dark, and then we'll get creepy. And I'm sure that we'll end up with some kind of a holiday special at the end of the year, like we usually do. But anyway, just a quick little. Very, very vague preview of some things we have coming up in the future. So check us out on RaiseByRentals.com and at RaiseByRentals on the socials to stay up to date with the episodes that we have coming out. And of course, check out RadPantheon.com to look at all of the other Rad Pantheon projects, a super team, podcasters, artists, musicians, you name it, an art collective of creative friends supporting each other to help spread the gospel of rad stuff. So if you like this show, check out RadPantheon.com, listen to another podcast, check out one of the artists. Mike, you've got some projects on there. Tell us about some of them.
Absolutely. Well, there's the Boogeyman's Closet, which is our weekly horror movie review. We are finishing up our month of unnecessary sequels, and then we're moving on to What a Twist. So movies with a twist at the end for September. I'm very excited about some of the entries on that list. We needed a palate cleanser after unnecessary sequels, so I curated a list of mostly awesome movies.
Nice.
But then there's also Count Creepyhead Saturday Morning Monster Mash, Creepyhead with a K, where three grown man children talk about toys and bitch about pop culture. Always a lot of fun.
Yes, it definitely is always a lot of fun. So once again, thanks everyone for tuning in to the Raised by Rentals program. If you had fun with us, let us know how you feel. Drop us a line, leave us a comment, leave us a rating on the podcast. Tell us what you think we should improve next time. And with that, I'm Josh.
I'm Mike.
And we have to return some videotapes.
Wild thing, I think you move me. But I want to know for sure. Every time I kiss you, I taste what other men have for lunch. The only thing can get you off is to see me in pain, but I think I love you. You make my heart scream. You took everything. Oh, wild thing.
That's the story of my life. No respect, no respect, no respect, no respect.